for people finding Christ, and how people can find Christ without even knowing that that's what they're doing. You know, like he's pointing to a gospel that is beyond propositions.
I made the connection to poetry actually right at the end of the last chapter and the beginning of the first chapter. At the end of the last chapter on page 108, he says, if we take seriously the knowledge of the twofold aspect of evil as the apocalypse teaches it in chapter 13. Let's start here. Where do we find good? We find it as the golden mean, the balance between the extremes of the two adversaries. That is why the Archangel Michael is often represented with the scales in his hand. The formula of the golden mean, coined by the ethical teaching of Greece, is more than an expression of expediency. It is the key to the mysteries of morality. We must be served by Lucifer. Without the Luciferic power, we should have no artistic gifts and no art. And we must also be served by Ahriman, for we need material science and technology. But man must stand in the middle, holding by the bridle, so to speak, the beasts from the abyss in both directions. The problem of evil, too, requires for its understanding a Trinitarian approach. The divine secret of the three-in-one, once grasped in its significance, will solve all the riddles of existence, including that of evil. And so then he goes on in the beginning of this chapter, page 110. He says, however, although the seventh trumpet does not signify the end of the world, it is nevertheless accompanied by a last judgment. In the midst of the stream of time, it leads mankind to decisions which assume an ever more final character. The sixth trumpet has already introduced the motif of the threshold. The pillars on which the angel stands form the gateway which has to be passed through. So he's referring back to that gateway between the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic. And my note here is how poetry crosses this divide. At this threshold begins the great divide. Mankind is divided into the one section that succeeds in crossing the threshold and the other which evades the threshold, thus binding itself all the more closely to the material world. So, and then he goes on to talk about the dualities there. And when I read that, I thought of, because that idea of threshold really resonated with me, like that you're standing at the threshold of something, right? And he also goes on a little further in the book to talk about a portal, threshold and a portal. And to me, that's beauty, right? The portal is always beauty, and that beauty is found in like the poetry is like the thing that brings those two worlds together. So the poet stands at the threshold, and that portal is the beauty created, or the epiphany that you have, right? When you read the poetry. So David White says here, the power of poetry. The poet lives and writes at the frontier between deep internal experience and the revelation of the outer world. There is no going back once this frontier has been reached. A new territory is visible, and what has been said cannot be unsaid. Poetry is a break for freedom. In a sense, all poems are good. All poems are an emblem of courage and the attempt to say the unsayable. But only a few are able to speak to something universal, yet personal and distinct at the same time, which is what you were talking about. We create a door through which others can walk into what previously seemed unobtainable realms in a passage of a few short lines.